Welcome. We are doing a video series about what we believe. We are just taking we as the church are just taking some videos about what we believe, about some hard topics, and just expecting that our openness and clarity are going to bring edification and wisdom to the church. So without further ado, this video is going to be about, should my life look different now that I follow Jesus? The rather short answer is yes, but you may be asking, how so? That's a valid question to ask. My evidence for this comes from Jesus and the rich young ruler. There's the story in the New Testament where this man comes to Jesus, and he's a rich young ruler. He has a lot, and he says, Jesus, how do I follow you? And he says, give up everything to the poor. Sell everything that you have. And the rich young ruler walks away from Jesus, and it's a gut-wrenching story of like, oh, is that me? Like am I withholding anything from Christ? Here at Stithton, we want to be honest that this isn't a bait and switch. Like walking with Jesus is hard. There's really hard things that come by it. It's a risk. You are laying down the potential of anything and everything to Him. When you yourself go to the altar, you sacrifice yourself. Just as an animal would have been sacrificed there in the Old Testament, you're bringing yourself up there. That's a big risk. Love is a really big risk, and this one is especially a big risk. So high stakes, but I think that Jesus is going to be worth it. The world is going to tell you that the greatest things are free, but the greatest things to the Christian will cost you something, right? And the greatest one, which is Jesus, is going to cost you everything. My marriage cost me a lot. It cost me my time. It cost me my intentionality, my finances, a bunch of different things I have to put on the line for my marriage, but it's worth it. There's no bait and switch here. Jesus asks for everything, and it's a risk for sure, but it will be worth it in the end. If we look at the Old Testament, we see God at Sinai, right? Sinai was this place where the Israelites met God. Moses went up as their representative, and he came down with the Ten Commandments. And we see later Leviticus come out of this covenant at Sinai, which is a bunch of rules that govern the ethics of the Israelite people during their time in the wilderness and after, as they were a nation. While our lives look a lot different than these ancient Israelites, God's understanding of covenant is similar. When we enter into covenant with God, things got to change just like they did for the Israelites. Now they're going to change differently, but the idea that when we enter into covenant, part of that covenant responsibility is going to be changed from the inside out. And responsibility is kind of a negative word, but part of our joy is then changing how God desires us to change and living into the created identity that God created you to live and to see greater human flourishing. That's what God's calling us into today. The relationship we enter into is one of mirroring. We are meant to reflect God's glory to the rest of creation. That's what God is doing at Sinai. He's saying, you now get to be representatives through this law to show everyone my character, everyone my goodness. That is what you get to show in the change that you have when you're in relationship with God. You shall wear the covenant on your forehead, on your hand. This was something that was said at the end of the covenant, that the most outward appearance of you should be that of covenant. Now, maybe that's not a physical outwardness, like a tattoo or like a sign that says, I'm a Christian, but your ethics, the things that you choose to engage in, the things you choose not to engage in, should be outward. Man, like I choose not to engage in these things because I have been marked by Jesus on the most outward parts, my forehead and my hand, which were symbolic of the things that everyone could see. In all of my engagements, in all of my relationships, what will mark me is not the world, but what will mark me is the covenant that I have made with God. That's what God does for Israel. Is God some sort of crotchety guy in the sky who hates joy? Absolutely not. There were some guys called the Desert Fathers who thought that, and they went into the wilderness to starve themselves, that they weren't tempted with anything. That's not God. Actually, no, He actually knows what will bring you more purpose in this life than you do because He created you. He is the author of purpose. He's the author of joy, and He knows intrinsically more about how to bring you that than you could ever bring to yourself. That His level of satisfaction will always succeed, will always be greater than what you would have for yourself, right? This is the idea of the blueprint. That, let's say, that God created us so intentionally, maybe like an airplane, right? Just as an airplane is designed right? It has so much intentionality into every piece of the airplane, right? If one piece is wrong, then the airplane is going to not fly right. It's going to have not correct wind resistance. It's created with so much intentionality. If the blueprint feels it's better to be used somewhere else or something else, it doesn't change the reality. It's still an airplane and is created for that intended purpose. If the airplane decides, I would like to be a wheel more than an airplane, like a car wheel, greater functionality, greater flourishing is going to come if the airplane lives as it was created to live. Similarly with you, when we decide to live into what God says about us and not what we think about us, greater human flourishing will occur. When we submit our ideas about sexuality, generosity, ethics, and theology to Him, it's because it's not because He hates you. It's because He loves you and He knows what's best for you. Right? What happens when this book, when the Bible becomes the center of our ideas and the centrality of our beliefs, is we experience greater human flourishing. So the next step, if you aren't a follower of Christ, accept Him. Don't seek lasting change by yourself. Like if you think that you're going to be able to change as Christ desires you without the Spirit that empowered Christ to live the life that He lived, you're just never going to. So if you think, man, I can just follow the principles of Jesus and not really know Him, be in relationship with Him, the first step is you must know Him and have His Spirit within you. Don't sin that grace may abound, but be transformed, right? Live a life characterized by what Scripture has. Obey His word. It says that we're supposed to ahava God or love God by obeying Him. We love Him by submitting to what He says in Scripture about us. And the last one, the altar is where sacrifice was made and God moved. Will you put yourself on the altar? Will you not be the rich young ruler and decide, you know what, the little pieces, these little things that I do have, I don't have much. Jesus, you can have them, and I believe that you have greater things in store for them than I would. Would we be a sacrificial people? Would we put ourselves up on the altar today? So should my life look different now that I follow Jesus? Absolutely. Let's work on that together.